This happened in the winter of 2021, right before Christmas. I was working part-time for a grocery delivery service in a suburb outside Portland. I took the night shifts because the pay was better, and honestly, I liked the quiet. Fewer people, less traffic. But this one delivery, I'll never forget it. It was a Thursday night, a little after 11 p.m. I just finished a drop-off when another order came in. A priority grocery delivery to a house on Dyer Road, a few towns out, almost rural. The order was big. Bottled water, snacks, canned goods, some frozen dinners, milk, cereal, even diapers and formula. It was weird because the app showed it had been placed anonymously. No name, just initials. JR. I almost skipped it, but the payout was high. Real high, like someone really wanted this delivered. So I accepted. The GPS said it would take me about 25 minutes. I drove through foggy back roads with barely any streetlights. It was cold, misty, and quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears. I pulled onto Dyer Road around midnight. It was a long, narrow street with only a few scattered houses. Most looked dark, no lights, no movement. The house I was headed to was number 1286. I remember that number clearly. When I got there, I was confused. The place looked abandoned. The front yard was overgrown, and the porch light was flickering like it was barely hanging on. The windows were dark, and the paint on the siding was peeling. There was no car in the driveway, no holiday decorations, no signs of life. I double-checked the app. The pin was exact. This was the house. I sat in my car for a minute, debating whether to leave the groceries on the porch and drive off, but the app had instructions. Please knock. Do not leave groceries unattended. I grabbed the bags and walked up to the porch. The wood creaked under my boots. The air felt thick, like it hadn't been breathed in a while. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. And then I heard it. The sound of footsteps inside. Slow, deliberate, creaking across the floor just beyond the door. I took a step back. The porch light buzzed and went out. I held my breath. Then the door opened. Just a few inches. No one was there. Just darkness. And a cold draft that rolled out from inside, carrying a smell. Not rotting, exactly, but old. Like wet wood and dust. Groceries for JR, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No reply. I stepped closer and gently pushed the door open another few inches. Hello? What I saw made my stomach drop. The inside of the house was empty. I don't mean messy or run down. I mean completely vacant. No furniture, no pictures, no rugs, nothing. Just wooden floors, bare walls, and the outline of where a couch might have once been. The only thing in the room was a single baby stroller, old-fashioned, metal, like something out of a 1970s catalog. I turned around to leave, groceries still in hand, but the door suddenly swung wide open behind me. I froze, and then I heard a baby crying, soft, distant, echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. My chest tightened. I don't know what possessed me to step inside, but I did. Maybe I was thinking someone actually needed help. Maybe it was instinct. I took one step into the living room. Hello? I called out. Anyone here? The crying continued, steady, rhythmic. It sounded like it was coming from upstairs. I set the bags down by the door and slowly walked across the living room. My boots echoed loudly on the bare floor. At the base of the stairs, I paused. The crying was louder now. I could hear it coming from the second room on the right. I climbed the stairs, one creaky step at a time. When I reached the hallway, the air changed. It was freezing, like I'd stepped into a walk-in freezer. My breath came out in little clouds. I moved toward the door where the crying was coming from. The door was slightly open. I pushed it. Inside was a nursery, perfectly preserved. Crib, rocking chair, faded wallpaper with little stars. The crying stopped the moment I entered. The crib was empty, but something moved behind me. I spun around and the door slammed shut. I ran to it, yanked it open, and sprinted down the stairs. I didn't care about the groceries. I didn't care about the payout. As I reached the bottom, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A figure in the corner of the living room. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still in the shadows, watching me. I bolted out of the house and into my car, locked the doors. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the keys in the ignition. When I finally started the engine, the headlights flashed on, and for a split second I saw someone standing in the upstairs window, just watching. I reported the address to the app. They told me the order had been placed using a stolen card. They removed the order from my history. When I tried to go back and find the location again, it didn't show up on GPS anymore. Out of curiosity, I went back a week later during the day. There was no 1286 Dyer Road. The addresses jumped from 1284 to 1288. No vacant house, no overgrown yard, just an empty plot of land with snow. Like the place had never existed. But I was there. I know I was. And I still don't know who or what ordered those groceries. This happened to me in 2021 during my final year working late-night deliveries for a local courier company in Maryland. I was doing weekend shifts, mostly delivering parcels that people paid extra to receive overnight. It was a simple gig. Pick up, drop off, get a signature, move on. That Saturday started like any other. My last delivery was to a residential address in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Dunbar Street. It was already 12:45 a.m. when I pulled into the area. The house was at the very end of the street, a little separated from the others. No streetlights there, just the pale wash from my van's headlights. The place looked off. Not run down exactly, but like no one had cared for it in a long time. The yard was overgrown, the porch light flickered, and the front windows were completely dark. But the order said overnight delivery, signature required, and I wasn't about to return with an undelivered package at that hour. I got out of the van and walked up to the porch. The stairs creaked under my weight, and as I reached the front door, I knocked twice. Nothing. I waited, knocked again, louder. I could hear a faint rustling inside, like movement on hardwood floors. Then a voice, very soft, called out from inside, "Come in. The door's open." I froze. We're trained never to enter a residence, but the voice sounded old, frail. Maybe the customer was elderly or disabled. Against my better judgment, I turned the knob. The door opened with an eerie groan. I stepped inside. It was dark. Not just dim, completely pitch black except for the faint moonlight trickling through the windows behind me. I called out, "Delivery for Mrs. Fletcher?" No answer. I stepped further in. The air smelled stale, like mold, dust, and something else, like rotting fruit or something decaying. The living room was oddly empty. No furniture except for an armchair in the corner, facing the wall. I called out again. Nothing. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Creaking down the stairs, just around the corner. I turned toward the hallway leading to the staircase and saw a figure. It was a woman, thin, barefoot, wearing a long, loose nightgown. Her gray hair was hanging over her face, so I couldn't see her eyes. She stood completely still at the bottom of the stairs. Then, in a whisper, she said, "You have it. The thing I've been waiting for." My gut told me to leave, right then and there. But before I could say anything, she turned and started walking slowly down the hallway, deeper into the house. She didn't say a word, just walked and stopped in front of a door. She opened it, just a few inches, and gestured for me to come. I wasn't about to follow her, but I still needed a signature, so I took out my scanner and said, "Ma'am, if you could just sign here, I'll be on my way." She stood there, half inside the room, and said, "It's not for me, it's for him." My skin went cold. From the other side of the door, I heard a second voice, male, raspy, guttural, saying something I couldn't quite understand. It didn't sound right, it sounded angry. I backed away, told her I'd come back tomorrow. Then the door slammed shut in front of her, hard, and the woman was no longer standing there. The hallway was empty. I ran out of that house as fast as I could, jumped into the van, peeled out of the driveway, and didn't stop until I hit the main road again. Back at the depot, I told my supervisor. He checked the delivery logs and frowned. "Dunbar Street, that house doesn't take deliveries. It was condemned 6 years ago. No one's lived there since a fire broke out in 2015. I pulled up the order again. It had a real name, a real number. We tried calling it, disconnected. I never found out who or what I almost handed that package to, but for weeks after, I had nightmares. In every one of them, I'm standing in that hallway, hearing that rasping voice from the other side of the door. Sometimes I still dream that I handed the package over, and every time I wake up screaming. This happened in 2021 when I was doing late-night deliveries for a small local courier service in Northern California. I was 28 at the time, between jobs, trying to scrape together money after getting laid off from my full-time gig in Sacramento. A friend hooked me up with a route covering some rural areas in El Dorado County. Most deliveries were just medical supplies, documents, the occasional overnight package for people who lived too far out for Amazon or FedEx to handle quickly. The route paid decent enough, especially the night shifts, because no one else really wanted them. I'd start around 5 p.m. and usually finish by midnight or 1 a.m. at the latest. Most nights were uneventful, boring even. Quiet highways, empty roads, old houses tucked behind trees. You'd be surprised how peaceful it was out there. But there was one night, one delivery, that I still think about. Sometimes it wakes me up in the middle of the night. It was early October. The air had that crisp feeling like winter was whispering just out of sight. I had a mostly normal route, 10 packages, a few drop-offs in Placerville and Comenius. But the last one was flagged as urgent with a hand-signed delivery note. The address was way up in the mountains past a place called Grizzly Flat. I'd never been that far out before, but the GPS showed it as a small private road called Mountain View Trail. No big deal, maybe 20 minutes from the last stop. I started heading up around 11:30 p.m. The road narrowed fast. At first it was gravel, then dirt, with thick pine trees on both sides. The kind of place where if your car breaks down, no one's going to find you till morning. I remember thinking, who the hell lives all the way out here? When I finally got to the address, somewhere around 12:05, it looked like a small cabin. No lights on outside, just a single faint glow inside. There was no driveway, just a clearing with enough room to pull up beside a pile of chopped wood. The package was light, maybe 2 or 3 pounds, no return address, just a handwritten label. Deliver to resident. Urgent. Do not leave unattended. I walked up the wooden steps and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, louder, still nothing. I was about to turn around and write it up as a failed delivery when I heard movement, slow, creaky footsteps from inside. Then the door opened, barely, just a few inches. I couldn't see a face, just part of an eye peeking out through the crack. Delivery, I said, package for this address. Silence. Then a whisper. Leave it there. On the mat. I nodded. Sure thing. As I bent down to place the box, I noticed something strange. There were long scratches, deep gouges, along the base of the door, like someone had taken a knife to it. Or claws. I didn't say anything, just stood up and turned to leave. Before I could take a step, the voice whispered again. Have you seen it? I paused. Seen what? The thing that follows. I turned back. Sorry. But the door was already closed. No sound, no lock click, nothing. I got the hell out of there. As I backed out, my headlights briefly lit up a trail of footprints in the dirt. Bare feet, small, like a child's, but they led away from the house, into the woods. There were no other tracks, just those. I drove faster than I probably should have all the way back down that mountain road. I didn't relax until I hit pavement again. But the weirdest part came the next morning. I submitted my scanned delivery confirmation and expected to be done with it. Around noon, my supervisor called. Hey, about that drop-off on Mountain View, he said. Yeah? There's no such address. I tried to pull it up to bill the sender. Doesn't exist. No property records. Not even a private parcel. I was confused. What? I was there. I delivered it. House. Cabin. Whatever it was. He sighed. I believe you. But I checked satellite view. There's nothing at those coordinates. Just trees. I tried pulling it up myself. Nothing. No cabin, no clearing. Just dense forest. I even went back a few days later, thinking maybe I'd turned off the wrong road. I retraced my entire route. There was no Mountain View Trail. Just a rusted-out gate and a washed-out dirt path, barely wide enough for a bike. Completely overgrown. I've talked myself out of it a dozen times. Maybe I got the address wrong, maybe the GPS glitched, but I still remember the way the door creaked open, the whisper, the scratches, and I still wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed just a few minutes longer. Or worse, what would have happened if I had looked behind me?